Yo, yo, what's good, guys? Welcome to Sense of Feet. Great to see you. Happy to be here. Today is an interesting day. So, today we're going to share an interview that I did with Barrie Davenport. Barrie is a life coach and a passion coach, and she writes the site barriedavenport.com and also liveboldandbloom.com. And I know there's so much confusion around pursuing our passion. So Barrie is going to school us to how to deal with certain things, like, for instance, how to move forward when you feel disengaged and you're not really sure, like, what is my passion? Is it this? Is it that? Like, how do I move forward from that? I know there's something more, but I don't exactly know what the hell it is. And I hear that pursuing your passion is the way to go about figuring that out. So we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at the other side of things, which is going to be, well, maybe, just maybe, it could be, and I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not naming names here, maybe you're a passion slut and you've got too many passions and you're like, man, I want to do all of these things and I'm not willing to settle for a monogamous, passionate life. You kind of want to, do it all. No judgment. We're going to go into that. We're also going to talk about why comfort is cock blocking you from living a passionate life and kind of how we need to be able to become uncomfortable in order to really get where we want to go. So what we want to do is we want to become comfortable being uncomfortable. In other words, comfort is cock blocking us from living the most passionate life that we can. And we're also going to dive into what to do if you feel like you can't make a career from your passion. Maybe your passion is collecting, Smurf figurines or, Batman cards, or maybe it's doing something that you just feel like isn't so realistic. Well, can you still have that passion as a part of your life? Can you make a living from it? What the hell do you do? We are about to jump into all that right now. Hope you guys love the interview. Let us know in the comments below. Let's get into it.
It is my pleasure. I just feel the energy already. It's so wonderful.
Well, awesome. And so just for everyone watching and just to give a little bit of background, normally I don't really do these kinds of things. I'll get emails from people about like, hey, can you help promote this thing or that thing? And you've been so supportive in the WTF conference that we did. And I feel like what you're speaking about and your passion material is so relevant to the community here. And I just figured, all right, well, let's get Barrie on video. Let's ask her a bunch of really interesting questions about passion and take it from there. So just thank you for joining us.
I love it. I'm really excited to talk about it. Another passionate peer here.
That's awesome. Well, so
Yeah.
tell us what got you to the point in your life where you started helping people figure out what their passions were and how to engage more in it.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I was in public relations most of my professional career, then stopped for a while to have kids. And my oldest daughter wanted to be a professional ballet dancer. So I had a PR consultancy, and I stopped my work with that so I could drive her 60 miles round trip to the Atlanta Ballet Dance Studios so she could train. So that took a chunk of my day. I had to do that twice a day for several years. So, I was supporting her in her passion, which was really fun, and helping my other two kids with what they were doing. And then she left home. And so I kind of went through the typical beginning of the empty nester stage thinking, what am I going to do with my life? Because I tried to get my PR consultancy cranked back up, and my heart was totally not in it. It suddenly felt meaningless, promoting other people's things and promoting services that I didn't really feel passionate about myself. So I started on this search, and it was really, I was really filled with a lot of fear and confusion about it, because at that point I was 48 years old. I'd been doing PR all my life. I'd been a mom, and I thought, what am I going to do at 48? I don't have any more skills. I'm not capable. I don't know anything about the computer. But something inside of me just kept compelling me to move forward. That urge, that inner spark or whatever, when you really want to find that thing that makes you come alive. So I went on this sort of circuitous search of my own without really any roadmap. I took lots of assessments, and I read books, and I read blogs, and I went to a coach, and I went to workshops. And coaching and counseling kept coming up for me as good places, good matches for me. So I researched both, and I love the coaching model. So I went back to school with a lot of fear and trepidation, but I got my coaching certification and loved it, loved what I was doing. And then as part of the coaching, I wanted to market my business. So I started like a really small, ridiculously simple blogger blog because I didn't know what I was doing. And started researching blogging, and then realized, oh my God, I love this. I can reach so many people. I can, share my coaching techniques and ideas with so many people online. I love writing. I was an English major in school. And so then that opened another door of passion for me, which I find quite often happens. If you find one thing, it leads you to another thing, and it's sort of like this, Russian doll syndrome. You open one top and another one opens for you. So that's how it started, and it's been a real learning process for me. I've had a huge learning curve in terms of just the technology, but I love it so much, it's just compelled me to keep going forward. So now I'm doing the thing, living the dream, like you.
Well, that's so great. And one of the things for everyone watching, I'm sure that we can relate to, is that what you did was you left an old career behind. And so most of the people who are watching this video are going to be in their 20s and 30s. And you've had the guts to do it even when you were way past that point in life, which I think is something worth noting, because so many of us feel like we've built up our career, and we've probably only dedicated 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it is, which is a significant amount of time, but we're really scared to walk away from that place of this is security, this is foundation. So I felt like that was such an interesting thing to point out for you on your journey.
Yes, and without trying to sound like I'm the old wise person here, and I'm not, but if I can share anything with your viewers, it's, you can reinvent yourself 100 times over during your lifetime. So don't get stuck where you are. Don't believe that just because I'm in this place now that I have to stay here or it's impossible to change. I love how Tim Ferriss writes about having several small mini retirements or changes in your life along the way. You don't have to have that career that starts at age 21 and lasts till retirement now. You can do anything you want to.
Yeah.
The online world has allowed us to do so much of that. And
I love it. Sorry to interrupt. I love it because I'm all at this point, like what you just said rings so true to me. I love the idea of continuously reinventing myself. I love it. And it was such a scary thing when I left my old job, because that was who I was and kind of what I did. It was my role. It was my identity. And it's so scary to walk away from who you are in order to become who you can become. And I think the more that I continue to do that, the more I build that muscle, and the more fun and comfortable and exciting it becomes, where before it was terrifying and felt like the most scary thing in the world. And now it just seems like that I can do that. I can reinvent myself. Okay, I'm doing this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to dress this way, and I'm going to do this for business, and I'm going to do... And it just becomes so much fun. Like, we're not constrained by these roles of who we think we are and think that those will define our future. So I want to wrap that into passion. So tell us about what is life passion, and I know you have a process for people who feel like there's got to be more and they're not exactly sure what that is. Tell us a little bit about the path to passion formula that you have.
Sure, I will, but could I go back and just say one other thing?
Go for it.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to direct your interview, but there was something that came to my mind that I really want to say to your people, and that is, if you're in a situation now before you, maybe there are a lot of unmarried people or newly married or people who don't have children or whatever, but, if you can set your life up so that you can reinvent yourself over time, rather than getting bogged down with a huge mortgage or with a place where you can't move or so much stuff that you have to keep paying for it. I wish in retrospect that I had set my life up more so that I could make those reinventions earlier in my life without feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm committed to this house in this city and whatever. Keep your life flexible and fluid, and it allows for that reinvention, which I think makes life exciting, right? When we can, change whenever we want to. So, okay, enough of that. That's my little piece of advice for all of you. So your question was my passion formula.
Yes. So people who are like, there's got to be more to life. I don't know what it is. I know maybe it's a passion. Maybe I don't know what the hell to do. How do we figure it out?
Right. Well, the first thing is I think you have to have a commitment to it and a belief that this is something that's really important. A lot of people think about passion as sort of like something you see on a bumper sticker or a refrigerator magnet. It sounds nice, but you don't really know how to affect it in your life or what it really means. And you have to take it seriously, like it's the most important endeavor of your life. And I truly think it is, uncovering that authentic part of you that wants to be expressed and learning how to activate that in the world somehow. And taking that seriously means making a commitment to it on a daily or a weekly basis. I'm going to spend X number of hours a week working on this and figuring out what it's all about. So that's the first piece. And if you can take it seriously, that's going to give you a lot of motivation to keep moving forward. The next piece of it is going through a process of learning more about yourself. And some of that for me included taking a lot of assessments and just getting a real good picture of my personality type and my intelligence type, and learning about how I learn things and how I express creativity. And there are lots of ways to do that and lots of tools online that you can do that with. And then looking at all the skills that you have and honing in on the skills that you really love. We all have a basket of skills, but some of them we hate and some of them we love. And, sometimes we feel forced to do the ones we don't like very much. But focus on the ones you love that make you feel really good and you feel happy about yourself when you're doing them. So that's another piece, learning those skills. Then taking a look at your current life and drawing out from that everything that does feel good and passionate for you and that you want to keep in this sort of passion environment for yourself. We tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater sometimes when we're looking for our passion. We think, oh, I'm so unhappy with my job. I hate it. But there are probably elements of your job and your life that you still do like. And so you want to hold on to those as you're looking for something new and passionate. Another big piece of it is addressing the internal things that are going on inside of you, the roadblocks and the emotional barriers and the limitations that I know a lot of people deal with when they're looking for passion. The fears of I'm going to fail, maybe I'll choose the wrong thing, maybe I'm not smart enough, maybe my friends and family will think I'm crazy, maybe there isn't a passion for me after all, all of that. You have to keep moving in spite of those fears. And there's a lot to addressing those limiting beliefs that I could go on and on about, but I think everyone can relate to that being a huge part of stepping past that and moving forward in spite of it. And then lastly, the willingness to experiment and to get involved in something that you think might be your passion deeply enough that you have some level of engagement with it. So you can't just say, I think I'm interested in the piano, and then you think, well, I don't know if it's something I want or not. You have to play the piano and practice it a little bit and move past a little bit of the difficult parts of it to think, I love this. I'm proficient enough at it that I realize I can do it and I want to keep doing it. Passion doesn't just fall in your lap. You have to sort of get in there and get dirty and experiment and be willing to say, okay, that one didn't work. Let me try the next one. You might have to go 2 or 3 times with different interests before you really land on it. So that's a brief overview of some of the things we go through in the course that I teach.
That's so great. So one of the things that I can picture myself wanting to ask you 4 years ago is this word passion puts so much, for me, it put so much pressure on me. I felt like I didn't know what my passion was, and there was this whole thing about how do you not know what your passion is? Are you not passionate? Maybe that had some shame around that. And are there any other words that you would use to describe passion that effectively communicate the same thing? Or how would you speak to somebody in that place who's like, I just don't know what my passion is. There's nothing that I can define as being my passion.
Right. Yes, and I think it's a process. I think it's something that doesn't just happen overnight. You wake up and you're suddenly, oh my God, I'm passionate about this thing. It is a process, and you have to follow clues and follow leads. So I would say a word that I would use along with passion would be engagement. Are you engaged enough in something that you want to keep going on with it, that it intrigues you enough, it draws you forward? Fulfillment, and having a sense of maybe some level of purpose tied to that passion. So maybe there's a bigger picture thing that inspires you, whether it's helping people, serving people, being creative. If you have that piece wrapped into your passion search, it's sort of going to give a container for it a little bit more and help you, have a benchmark for deciding what your passion is going to be. But it does take time. I mean, you do have to sort of follow a path and follow something far enough along so that you get a real feel for it. And people are afraid to do that because they think, oh, I'm going to invest all this time and energy in something, and it may not turn out. I want to know 100% for sure that I'm going the right path before I ever do that. That's impossible. You can't know that 100% for sure. You don't know until you get engaged. And it's not a failure to try something and it not turn out right. I mean, that brings you knowledge, right? You learn what you do like, you learn what you don't like, you gain from the experience, and you meet interesting people along the way. Maybe one of those people gives you a clue to something else that might be a better fit for you. So it's all a journey. And the process itself should be a passionate endeavor, I think. I think it can be really fun to go on that search and to think it's a grand adventure. You're seeking out something exciting, and you have all these little detours along the way that could be really interesting and bring you lots of great information.
Yeah, so there's two things I want to say and then so much more after that. But the two things that come up is lately what I've been doing, because the word passion for me kind of threw me off for a while. And sometimes when I work with coaching clients, it does the same for them. Where like, I don't know, is psychology a passion? Is philosophy a passion? And so one of the things that I've been doing lately is I've been saying to people, well, what would energize you? Like, think about doing this thing and then think about, is it going to energize you or is it going to deplete you? And if it's going to energize you, just go in that direction and see how that goes. Continue to do things that energize you. So that's been really helpful for me in one, my own life, but also in working with people. And then two is I interviewed a guy named Daniel Coyle who wrote the book called The Talent Code for the WTF conference. And he said a lot of people confuse what passion actually is, and they think that passion is just something that's fun to do. But actually, he says passion is the thing that you still want to do even when it gets hard. So that you get to the point where, where it's not just necessarily enjoyable to do it, but you still want to do it because you love it that much. And I thought that was a really profound insight, because that perfectly described where I am and have been at different points with business, where there's been ups and downs and ins and outs, but I'm still so passionate about what I do that I still want to do it even when it gets hard.
Yeah. In fact, I sometimes equate living or finding your passion to finding the love of your life. So if you find this woman that you're just wild about and she says, would you come over and help me move 50 boxes to the basement? Let's say if your friend asked you to do that, you'd be like, oh God, I don't want to do that. I want to go play basketball or whatever. But if the love of your life does it, you're like, I am over there. I'm going to help her, and you're willing to do that hard thing because you want to get to the good part, right? Yeah. You want to have that experience with this person that you love so much. And I agree with you absolutely that, I love what I'm doing so much, and yet I was so intimidated by and really didn't like the technology part of dealing with the computer. That's just not my strong suit. But man, I learned all of that stuff so quickly because I really wanted to get to the good part. I wanted to be able to write and to get the information out there and create this beautiful blog. So it does motivate you to go past the hard things. You want to do that.
Yeah, that's so great. And so how about the other person? How about the person who feels like they have too many passions and like everything is of interest to them? They want to do this, they want to do that, they want to do the next thing. What advice do you have for them?
The passion slut, as we call them, right?
I know nothing about that person.
I'm sorry, that was inappropriate for
No, it's great. We're actually liberating. I don't believe in double standards. There's no such thing as sluts these days unless it's goes both ways. So I'm totally cool with it.
Okay, yeah, I'm just kidding. Well, that's a good problem to have, right? I mean, to have a lot of different things that you're interested in and engaged in. And sometimes if you look at your multiple passions, you can see ways that they might interconnect and ways you can bring them together so that you are working on a big picture kind of passion. I mean, I did that for myself with coaching and writing and blogging and, pulling all that together and teaching courses. So it all works sort of, in synchronicity. But I'm also a big believer in focus and that it's important to go deep with something rather than go wide with a lot of things. Because I think it's the depth of engagement, the depth of practice, the depth of learning. That's when you really get the most fulfillment. It's like going to the marrow of it, right? You're sucking out the juicy bits. And I would advise people that if they have a lot of various passions that have no relation to one another, just pick something and focus on it for a while and get into it and go deep with it. And, you're going to have a long life, so then you can do something else later. You can reinvent yourself with a new passion.
So how? But like, so people are watching this and I can imagine that person and they're like, but I've got so many. How do I do it? So what's some practical advice that we can give for someone who is interested in so many different things? How can they pick one? Because I believe what you're saying about the focus is so huge.
Right.
How can we get them to the point where they're like, okay, boom, I'm going to actually commit to focusing on this thing? How do we deal with, but what about those other 8 things I'm passionate about?
Right. Well, I think you do have to look at it very practically. And if you want your passion to be your work, for example, I mean, you can have a passion and it doesn't have to be your work. But let's say, I mean, that work's huge. It takes up a lot of our time. So let's say your passion is your work. Well, then you look at your lifestyle. How much money do you want to make? Where do you want to live? What family obligations do you have? What are your values? And which of these, and values are huge. I think that's something really big. I haven't spoken about that, but defining what's really most important and putting most of your energy into something that supports that is another good benchmark for making a choice about what you want to focus your time and energy on.
Yeah, just a quick, sorry, please remember what you were about to say right there. Please remember it. But that's the core of my coaching that I start with. Before we do anything is we need to find out what your values are. What are the things that are most important to you in life? And then how can we create a life that revolve around those things? And then so I start there and then we talk about passions and strengths and service and all those other fun things afterwards.
We are singing from the same hymn book, baby. I do the same thing. So.
That's awesome.
All good. Yeah. So, I forgot what I was going to say.
No!
I'm sorry.
That's always the risk of cutting somebody off. It's like, I don't want you to forget, but at the same time.
I remember we were talking about how to help somebody practically make that decision. So you take a look at all of that extraneous information, though it's not really extraneous, it's important, and then look at your passions and say, which one of these supports and helps me achieve all of these other things in my life that I need to achieve. And you can make your decision that way. I mean, if you have a passion, say, for, I don't know, writing Gregorian chants or something, I mean...
Who doesn't, obviously, clearly.
I mean, we all do. It's a glutted field. So you best not choose that as your main passion for a career, right? You want to be realistic about how you can make a living from and fill your time with a particular passion.
Let me ask you a question. And again, if there was somewhere you wanted to go with that, please remember.
Okay.
How about, I have a good friend of mine, one of my best friends, who just left my old job, right? So he actually had my old position, which was as an IT consultant. And he just left about a month and a half ago. And he has this incredible passion for music. And not only does he have a passion, but he has a musical ear. Like if he listens to this interview, he'll pick up on the little glitch, the static that me and you don't know. Or he'll really, we're in a cafe. He's so musically inclined and he's got a great work ethic. He's a real smart kind of practical guy. Not that he has Harvard degree or anything, but just he has a diligent focus to being able to solve problems, and
right.
And I know that he loves music and audio so much, and he's good at it. But it could seem almost unrealistic to think that you're going to have a field in music, whether it's making music or being involved in music in some way. How could he go about, let's say, figuring out? Because he's at this crossroad in life where there's so much uncertainty and he's not sure what he wants to do as far as a career ahead of him. And he knows that music is his passion, but he's not sure, can I make a career out of this? What advice would you give to him for figuring out a situation like that?
Again, really practical advice. Find somebody who's doing the thing that you really want to do. So if he wants to be a producer, if he wants to be in a band, or if he wants to write music, whatever it is his focus is, find 2 or 3 people who are doing that successfully. And if you can't contact them and ask them directly, at least research and find out how did they do it? What steps did they take? How hard was it? And then do research otherwise. How glutted is the field? How difficult is it to make a living doing that? What's the salary range? And then you have to ask yourself the hard questions. Can I live with that? Can I live with that, whatever it is you find out? And if you can't, then you figure out how can you make that passion a part of your life otherwise. So maybe you volunteer in it, maybe it's a hobby, Maybe it's a part-time gig that you do. Um, I think a little bit of passion is better than no passion at all. I mean, if you are working in a job that's not very exciting, but it pays the bills, at least if you can, outside of your work, do something that fills you up, then your cup is full when you go to that job that you're not feeling so great about. And then maybe later on you transition to something that's a little bit closer to what you love or has some elements of what you love.
Yeah.
But, I would say to someone, don't give up on the passion. Don't just say I'm not doing it at all because I can't have 100% of it.
Yeah.
That's my best advice.
I think that's such great advice, and I don't know what the phrase you use, sing from the same song or something like that, but I think that we do, because I'm very practical in that sense also, but practical not by what we've been conditioned to think is practical, but practical like, am I willing to commit the next 10 years of my life to making this work? Like, to me, that's a very practical, if you're in your 20s and you have no other obligations, or your 30s, or at any point, to me, I'm okay. And then knowing that when we commit to the long-term process, that it happens so much quicker because we have that focus on, I'm going to work my ass off as hard as I possibly can to make this happen. But I thought your idea of weighing and kind of researching other people who, I got so excited, I kind of felt myself drifting off there for a second. But I think that, your advice of researching other people who are in the field and seeing what they do, how much they make, and how they went about actually creating a reality out of that, I thought that was such great advice. Because I think there is so many people who are watching who are wondering, do I leave my job or do I stay in my job? And if I leave my job, how do I make a living doing what I love to do, doing what my passion is? And I felt like that was great advice to ground that kind of uncertainty.
Yeah. And, I think that once you find something you feel passionate about and you get involved in it even a little bit, let's say you go volunteer. Let's say you are a musician and you call up a studio and say, I'll give you 5 hours a week of my time just so I can come in and be in the environment and hang out and learn a little bit. And so you go in there and you bust your butt because you're having so much fun and you love what you're doing. And they might look at you and go, God, this guy's he's really great. He's working his ass off and he's willing to help us out here. And so they might say, hey, we've got a job, or we know somebody, or you'd be great at doing this. And there's something really infectious about a passionate person, somebody who loves something so much that they're willing to give away their time. And, that's a great way to go about it too. Just volunteer or shadow somebody who's doing it already, or, go hang out with people who are doing the same thing that you're doing. Scott Densmore talks a lot about, being in a community of like-minded people. And I think that's really great. You pick up that energy and they pick up your energy, and somehow there's things being shared and doors opening.
Yeah. One of the things that I think happens oftentimes is there's this element of social comparison when it comes to a lot of things in life, but particularly engaging in a passion. So I want to go do this thing that I'm really passionate about, like, make music, but there's so many other people out there who are so much better than me. There's so much more further ahead on the path. And how can we, and oftentimes it'll make us feel insecure and inadequate when we compare where we are with where other people are, what we've done with what other people have done. How can we deal with that component of this whole passion formula and figuring it out?
Yeah, and that's a big question. I'd say that the benefit of age is one huge thing with that, because as you get older, you don't care as much, and that's a wonderful thing. You might get wrinkles, but you don't care as much. So it's a good little trade-off there. When you are a creative person and you're wanting to express yourself, it is hard not to look at other people and think, oh, they're better than me. But the passion is the doing. It's not the achieving. The passion is the practice of the thing that you are passionate about. It's not reaching some destination. And so you have to keep bringing that focus back to the present moment. I love dancing, or I love playing music, or I love writing blog posts, or I love helping people. And so you just get in there and you love what you're doing, and you try to stay disconnected from outcomes and results, because when you're focused on the doing of the work, then that's when you're really engaged, when you're in that flow state, that state of everything disappears and you're just into it and you're just doing it. And it's a mental exercise. It's a little game of just reeling back in your thoughts and saying, nope, I'm not going to focus on that. I'm just going to do what I love. And if I flub up or if I look stupid or whatever, oh, big deal. I'm
Yeah.
trying and I'm going to keep doing it.
Have you ever read the book called Mastery by George Leonard?
I haven't.
Oh, it's such a cool book. So he's all about that. And what he says is it's all about the path. It's the master's journey. And that we live in a society that constantly bombards us with continual climaxes. And that we're never like trained to understand that the majority of life is a plateau. And so we live in this instant gratification culture that's constantly seeking climaxes, whether it's from food or it's from movies or TV or whatever it is. And that when we hit a part that's hard in our life, that we think there's something wrong with us because that's the way that pop culture has conditioned us to think. And he has this beautiful quote that I'm going to butcher in the book, and he says something along the lines of, the master is the person who is fortunate enough that for every one step that they take towards their goal gets 2 steps further away from them. Just meaning that we fall so in love with the process. And that's when I speak about I'm going to commit myself for 10 years to figuring out how to be a life coach and make a living doing that, or how to make music and make a living doing that. It's because if you love what you do and you're passionate about it, then the path is the prize. It's not about getting to that destination. Sure, there's certain things we need to figure out, like financial security and mental stability and kind of these things to put in place, but it's that we fall in love with what we do, and then it just becomes about moment to moment. I love being on this interview talking to you, not I can't wait till it's published and posted and I have these many people who see it and we send it, and then we make this money or this thing happens. It's like just loving the whole engagement of the activity and to do things that energize you so that you enjoy that process. So I just love the wisdom you shared.
Yeah, I was just writing something yesterday, and I was quoting Eckhart Tolle, and he was talking about, don't show up as the writer, or don't show up as the coach or the doctor or the lawyer. Just show up as a conscious presence. Just be yourself. Just be that conscious presence, and be in the moment with people and with situations just as a presence, not as a role or as an outcome or anything that you identify yourself with. And you will be living real life in the present moment all the time. And I'm getting a little esoteric here, but I mean, it's really the only reality, right? This moment that we have right now, it's the only thing that's real. And we keep looking forward to things, but when we arrive at those things, it feels just like this present moment, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe sometimes it feels good, really good for a moment, but then the next day you're like, well, that was over, so now what am I going to do? What's next? But the treasure is finding the beauty in each of these moments.
So speaking of staying in this moment, let's fast forward for a second.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. And people who are watching, I know myself included, one of the biggest things that we deal with is the judgment of our family and our friends when we take on a new path in life. And not everyone has a mother like you who's so supportive as to take her daughter on these crazy trips in order to help her pursue her passion. Actually, a lot of people watching this, it's the opposite. It's where our parents are going to ridicule us or tell us we're being irresponsible. How can we deal with the judgments of our family, our friends, our society for not really getting us and wanting to do whatever it is that we're passionate about?
Yeah, that's hard because there's such an emotional tie with your parents. I mean, it's a huge thing. They have an impact on your soul from such an early age because they imprinted their personal operating system on you. And then as you get to be an adult and you try to create your own personal operating system, you're having to sort of pull those roots apart. And if parents are wise, they allow that to happen smoothly and they support their child, even if the choices that the child makes or the adult child don't reflect their deepest desires for their child. But it's a parent's job to raise independent adults. And then as a child gets older, it's the child's job to be able to wisely communicate that to parents. And that's a hard thing because you risk rejection or you risk shaming or you risk their displeasure. But you've got to learn to be comfortable with discomfort. When you
I love it.
when you become a passionate person, you have to be willing to say that being an authentic person for myself is more important than being a comfortable person. And I frankly think comfort is one of the biggest impediments to living a passionate life. Because when we don't like to stir the pot, when we don't like to disappoint, when we want to do things that we think we should do because that's what our parents or society tells us, that's a really entrapping kind of scenario. And you've got to get comfortable with saying, Dad, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be a lawyer. I love you, but this is my path, and I hope you'll support me.
Yes, yes, that's so
You're going to be
huge.
a lawyer.
Because you just said the thing that I found so useful, which is I love you, but I'm still gonna do this. Opposed to fuck you, I'm gonna do this. It's I love you and I'm still gonna do this. And
Right.
I can do this thing that I love even without you understanding that. And I can do this thing that I love even without you understanding that. And I can love you even if you don't get me, which hurts because you're like, this is my authentic self. How could you not get who I am at my most core level? Yet at the same time, that's the piece that I've found with family or friends or whoever it is who don't really get what I'm doing. It's like I can love you anyway without you getting it.
Yes. Yeah, and that's an honorable way to present it to your parents, because for the most part, parents have, they're doing things and saying things in the best, what they think is the best interest of their children, and they have experience and wisdom and all of that. But we all know that the best teacher is real life experience, not someone saying, well, this is the best way for you to do it. You've got to let your kid go out there and do what they need to do and fail sometimes and succeed and be their own person.
Yeah. Well,
Khalil Gibran, the poet Khalil Gibran, writes in The Prophet, he writes a whole thing about children, and he says something about parents are the bows from which their children as living arrows are sent forth. And we're really no more than bows to shoot these children off and launch them, and then the direction that the arrow goes is totally up to the arrow.
that's so beautiful. You gave me chills right now. That my dad has sent me that passage numerous times throughout my life. It's so beautiful. We'll link to that. That would be awesome to link to that here. Sweet. So one of the things you said is getting comfortable with discomfort. What are some ways we can do that?
Practice and start doing it in small bits, because I think we fear that discomfort so much we think that we're going to die if we disappoint somebody, or we're going to be shamed and like eating ketchup from a bottle, and that's all we'll do for the rest of our lives, sit in a corner and be without food or money or whatever. And it's just not true. The things that we fear will happen when we have discomfort don't really happen. We just have that feeling. That's all it is. It's just a feeling of discomfort. Because really, very rarely is a parent going to say, well, then I reject you out of hand. I'll never see you again. And if that's the case, then it's not a very good relationship to begin with. And maybe that's not a person that you want in your life. So you practice in small increments. You practice maybe with the first thing that you want to claim for yourself and say, I'm choosing to do this. And I'm going to do it, and I don't want to disappoint you, but this is my life, and I've got to live it the way I choose to live it. And then deal with the fallout.
And so this is great, and I want to honor your time and respect everyone who's watching's time, and I still have a couple questions I want to ask you, so I'm going to transition a little bit. One of the things that I've found to be really useful is to understand where my pleasure meets other people's pain. In other words, what energizes me, what do I like to do, what am I passionate about, that meets a point in someone else's life where they experience pain. So if I really get energized having conversations like this, and I know that there's a lot of people who are watching who are going through a struggle in their life trying to figure these things out, that is a really fun place to play and oftentimes financially lucrative place to play. How have you, or how would you advise somebody who's trying to figure that out? Like, where does my passion meet or my pleasure meet someone else's pain? How can I figure out what I can do in order to do what I love, but also get paid for it in some way?
Right. Well, it's a service-driven model, right? You're looking for how you can provide solutions or serve somebody else when they have a need that needs to be met, and that's their pain. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and, we all have gifts and talents and abilities that we take for granted in ourselves. Like I took for granted the fact that I was a good listener and a good communicator. I was always the person my friends went to for help and advice, but I just thought that was something friends did for each other. until I realized not everybody has that skill. Some people really aren't good at that, and they value that I am good at it, and they're willing to pay me as a coach. And it took a while to recognize those skills within myself and then see them as something that actually could be monetized. So it's a good practice to sit down and think about all the things that you've heard from friends, that you know about yourself, that you've seen in assessments or whatever, all the things that you're capable of doing, and recognize that not everybody in the world is capable of doing those things, and that some people actually would just love to have your support and advice, or your consultancy or your mentorship or whatever, to help them with that thing that you can do that they can't. And so it's sort of starting backward, it's starting from the end and looking from the outside with a beginner's mindset and saying, how do these skills that I take for granted, how would a beginner feel about learning these skills, and how can I create that for them?
Gotcha. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How about this question? What sucks about passion?
What sucks about passion? Oh, well, one thing that comes to mind immediately was when I first started, I was so into my passion work, and you said something about it, I think before we started the interview, that you're so engaged that you can't sleep, that you wake up in the morning and you're like at your computer first thing, and you're working all day and your eyes are tired and you forget to exercise, and you're so like wrapped up in it. And it was really eye-opening to me one day when my teenage daughter said, "Mom, you tell us not to be on the computer so much, it's not good for us, but you're on it all the time now." It's like, ooh, yeah, you're right. I better find some balance. So creating balance in your life is really important when you feel passionate, because passion can suck you in,
Yeah.
It's like that new love of your life when all you want to do is like go spend time with her, and you can't do that. You've got to like address real life and the people in your life and pay your bills and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then if you have too many passions, that can be, a difficult problem, as we talked about earlier. Beyond that, I don't know that much else sucks about passion. I think it's a pretty good thing.
Okay,
Do
cool.
you think something sucks about it?
No, I always want to hear the flip side, because here we
Yeah.
come on and we talk about how great something is. Well, what would the other person say? What's the downside? What's the part that doesn't get glamorized, that does
Right.
exist? I think it's important to also introduce those things as well.
Yeah, one other thing I would say is that sometimes people get tired of their passion. And I think this is true of people who have a lot of passions, that they do one thing and they think, okay, that was wonderful, but I'm getting bored now and I want to move on to something else. And I think that's fine. There are different personality types, and some people get engaged with something and want to focus on it for their entire life. And other times people get engaged for a short period of time, and then they want to move on to another passion. So as long as you are feeling that level of engagement that you talked about, and excitement, and what was the word you used?
Energized.
Energized, right. As long as you're feeling energized, keep going with it until you don't feel energized anymore, and move on and find something else.
That can be scary if we're thinking about making a living doing what our passion is.
It can be, but like we said before, you can reinvent yourself many times.
Yeah.
I made my living in public relations for 20-something years, and then I stopped and decided to make my living doing something entirely different.
Gotcha.
So,
Well, speaking of that, what's the number one thing that you now know about passion that you wish you knew when you were in your 20s?
I think it revolves around fear. I think it revolves around that fear. It does not have to hold you back. And I let fear hold me back a whole bunch in my 20s. I was just really afraid of making the wrong choice and hurting people and doing the wrong things and stepping outside of my comfort zone. But if I could have been able to challenge myself to live with that discomfort of fear a little bit and push just a little past it, so I could see that it wasn't going to eat me up, I think I could have enjoyed my passion a lot earlier. So, I would challenge those of you who are listening to, fear is going to be there, but just punch it in the face and keep going. Don't let it stop you, because it's really just an illusion. 99.9% of the time, the things that you fear never come to pass. And if they do come to pass, they are much, much, much less dangerous or hurtful than you feared they would be. You can survive whatever it is.
Yeah, that's great. So who it's for, and I'm sure if people are still watching this at this point, they're interested in it. So how does it serve where they are and kind of where they can get to?
Yeah, and I appreciate your asking me for that. That's very generous. It's called The Path to Passion. It starts on August 17th, and we start registration August 12th. It's a 4-week interactive online course, and we're going to be going through all of the things that we talked about today, all of the issues related to fear and understanding yourself and addressing roadblocks and experimentation and research. So by the end of the 4 weeks, people will really know what they're looking for, what their passion is, and then how to go about making it real in their lives. We're going to have a lot of great guest experts. It's packed full of articles and videos and podcasts and case studies, and then we'll have teleseminars where students can interact directly with me and with each other, and a forum where we can talk and ask questions and share, which is a great way to learn more about your own passion, is by talking to other people who are trying to find their own passion. So it's going to be a great community, and I look forward to getting to know people personally and working with them on a one-to-one basis through the course. I'd love to have some of your followers there, and it would be an honor to have them there. So I cordially invite them if they'd like to join.
That's so great. And then how can people keep in touch with you?
Sure, if they'll go to barriedavenport.com, they can find out more about the course there, and then there's a contact form on the site. So I'd love them to come visit and take a look and see what might interest them about passion. There's a lot of articles and information there that is absolutely free that they can read.
Okay, so cool. And then for everyone watching, guys, so drop a comment below, any questions that come up, any big takeaways that you had. One of the things that make this most impactful is when we share our experience and when we commit to saying, this is what I took away. This is something that was a big idea for me. So, and then share that in a community and in support and hearing other people. So sometimes we think that it's all about us, but really just dropping a comment is of service to other people. So drop a comment below. If you have any questions, we're happy to go through them. And just excited. Thank you guys for rocking with us. And Barrie, thank you as well.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. See you later.